The PXW FX9's Cine EI mode is a fully optimized mode designed to allow you to get the very best image quality with the greatest dynamic range from the camera. It's quite different to the way a conventional video camera works. In the Cine EI mode, the camera always records using the S-Log3 gamma curve at either the high, that's 800 ISO, or low, that's 4000 ISO base sensitivity. You can't add gain in the Cine EI mode, as this would reduce the camera's dynamic range. Instead, you have the ability to alter the EI, that's exposure index. There is no S-Log2 option in the Cine EI mode, as the FX9 has a very large dynamic range, too large for S-Log2. When using the Cine EI mode, by default the camera is set to use the S-Gamut3.Cine color gamut. This is a good choice for most applications, but should you wish to change this, you can do so via the menu and Project Cine EI setting. S-Gamut3 is for when you need an exceptionally wide color gamut and is suitable for high-end productions that have good color management. S-Gamut3.Cine is a wide-range color gamut and it is suitable for most types of productions. It's slightly smaller than S-Gamut3 and the colour primaries are closely aligned with DCI-P3, and this makes it very easy to use in post-production and is the recommended choice. When using the Cine EI mode, depending on how the camera is set up, it can apply a monitor lookup table or MLUT to the viewfinder, HDMI and SDI outputs to simulate how the footage may look after it's been colour graded. The default MLUT in the FX9 is the same S-709 LUT as used by the Sony Venice camera. When this MLUT is applied to the viewfinder or outputs, the video will have a very film-like look. The S-709 LUT is not really intended to provide the final look for your productions, it's mainly meant to be used on set for monitoring, but S-709, when combined with the FX9's new colour science, provides a great starting point for further post-production grading. They are enabled via the menu and shooting and monitor LUT setting. But be careful, don't enable an MLUT for internal record unless you no longer wish to record S-Log3 and instead wish to record the MLUT as a baked-in look. Now if you wish to use a different MLUT, you can change the MLUTs by going to the menu and shooting Monitor LUT. If the camera is set to output 1920 by 1080 HD over SDI or HDMI, then the MLUT will be added to the output signal. If the camera is set to output UHD, then the MLUT will only be applied to the viewfinder and, if enabled, the streaming output, HD sub-recording or proxy recording. It won't be applied to the output, which will remain as S-Log3. A full list of the MLUT recording and output options is displayed in the menu under the Shooting Monitor LUT Settings page. The viewfinder, HDMI and SDI output status can also be viewed via page 5 of the status pages. Exposure index allows you to easily offset your S-Log3 exposure in a controlled way so that you can move the midpoint of your recordings up or down to alter the highlight and shadow ranges, as well as change the signal to noise ratio. When you have enabled an MLUT for the viewfinder, the exposure index function will change the brightness of the MLUT. EI only changes the MLUT. The camera always continues to record at the base ISO of either 800 or 4000 in order to preserve the camera's full dynamic range. To change the exposure index, select a different position for the low, medium and high gain switch, or press the ISO gain button and use the multifunction dial. Or you can use direct menu to select the EI value displayed in the viewfinder. I recommend the use of the built-in waveform display to assist with monitoring and setting the exposure in the Cine EI mode. This can be enabled via the menu, Monitoring, Display On/Off, Video Signal Monitor. When the SDI and HDMI output is set to HD, the waveform display will be measuring the brightness of the chosen LUT. When the SDI and HDMI output is set to UHD, the waveform display will show the brightness of the S-Log3 recordings. What the waveform is measuring is indicated immediately above the waveform display. When viewing the S-Cinetone MLUT and you have exposed correctly, the picture in the viewfinder should look normal. When the MLUT looks to be correctly exposed, then the S-Log3 recording will also be exposed correctly according to the chosen exposure index. When viewing the S-Cinetone MLUT, you can use zebras at 70% for typical skin tones, just as you would with a conventional camera. If the base ISO of the camera is set to 800 ISO, and the EI is set to 800 EI, then this would be considered to be the base or normal exposure level. If you were to now lower the exposure index to 400 EI, the image seen in the viewfinder via the MLUT will become one stop darker and appear to be underexposed. Now, to compensate for this, you should then adjust your exposure so that one stop more light falls on the sensor, perhaps opening the iris. This then brings the brightness of the images seen in the viewfinder back to a normal looking level, and it also now means that the S-Log3 recording will become one stop brighter. As the recording is now brighter by one stop, you'll gain an extra stop of shadow information, noise will appear to be reduced in the final image, but your highlight range will be reduced by one stop. Because of the brighter S-Log3 exposure, the use of a lower EI than the base ISO may be helpful for reducing noise in the final graded images. I don't recommend the use of EIs that are higher than the sensor's base ISO, as these will result in a darker S-Log3 exposure, and this will increase the noise in the final images. For most applications, using an exposure index that matches the sensor's base ISO will produce good results. When shooting in the Cine EI mode, as an alternative to an MLUT, the FX9 has a function called Gamma Display Assist. When Gamma Display Assist is enabled, a normal Rec. 709 look is applied to the viewfinder. This look is very similar to the 709-800 MLUT, but it's only applied to the viewfinder. It cannot be added to any of the outputs. In addition, because this is a viewfinder function, its brightness doesn't change if you change the exposure index. Because in most cases with the FX9 you don't need to use an exposure index offset to get a good end result, the viewfinder Gamma Display Assist function can be very useful for assisting with exposure. When Gamma Display Assist is enabled, if the image in the viewfinder looks correct, then the S-Log3 exposure will also most likely be correct. Do be aware that it is possible to have both a viewfinder MLUT and Gamma Display Assist enabled at the same time. Please ensure that you only use one or the other. You should not use both together. When using Gamma Display Assist, even though the images in the viewfinder look like normal Rec. 709 images, it's important to realize that if you are using zebras, the histogram or waveform display to measure the exposure, these will all be measuring the S-Log3 recording levels. I suggest that if you shoot using the Cine EI mode regularly, you consider assigning the Gamma Display Assist function to an assignable button. And I also suggest that when using Gamma Display Assist with S-Log3, if you wish to use zebras to check the exposure, you should set the zebra level to 61% to check the exposure using a white card, as the zebras will be measuring the S-Log3 level.